Hello everybody and welcome back to the show. Today I'm talking about the by design philosophy. What is it? How did I come up with it? Why do I keep yapping on about it across social media? So a lot of the time on socials, I talk about by design as a contrast to hype. So the crux of it is that doing things by design is doing things with intention. And when it comes to product, whether that be fashion or interior or whatever it might be, doing things by design puts the user at the center. It puts the consumer at the center. And it's related to the designer trying to tell a story or trying to write a narrative or communicate an idea for the user a lot of the time. But it can also be just to make something beautiful, but again, it's for the user, or make something useful, but again, it's for the user. It's very user-centered. Whereas hype puts the product at the center. That's the way that I consider it. And the user is on the circumference around that. So when we consider clothes, for example, I think that's the easiest way to talk about it. We can talk about some Supreme drops, for example, and how the product is very much at the center. The product isn't offering any intrinsic value to the consumer other than the hype that's being created around it by the consumers themselves. A t-shirt is a t-shirt is a t-shirt, right? Unless it's giving the consumer something other than the perceived value derived from hype. And what I mean by that is there is a lot of fashion that tells a story. There are a lot of graphics that can tell a story or can help someone express themselves fully. There's a really great creator, I can't remember her name, but she talks about how your favorite anime series deserves better merch and how anime is one of the most creative industries out there, but the merch is obviously quite lackluster a lot of the time. And how the industry deserves better merch and people can wear the merch and it can be an expression of that person's uniqueness, individuality, and personality. And I think that's really important. So that's just one of the ways that doing things by design can help the user. It's helping them to express themselves more fully, whereas hype is really generated around the product. And I made a video last week about Taylor Swift, and even though Taylor Swift has got tons of money and a mad marketing department, and I haven't heard it yet, but there are reviews that I've seen for her recent record, The Life of a Showgirl, I think, they're not that great. But one thing that you've got to hand to her is that her ability to design an ecosystem that markets itself has been second to none. The Swifties are an army. And when she announced the record coming out on Travis and Jason Kelce's podcast, the Swifties went mad for it and came up with their own interpretations of different Easter eggs that she leaves. And I think this is really, really great design, to be honest. The whole Taylor Swift ecosystem is littered with Easter eggs and double, triple entendres and storylines that the Swifties love to dissect and interpret, and almost like detectives, right? And they create content about all of this stuff, and that content acts as the marketing material for the record itself. I'm not necessarily on Taylor Swift TikTok or Instagram, and the algorithm doesn't feed me Taylor Swift content, but I don't know whether the marketing, the label marketing was that intense for it. I don't know. It's Taylor Swift, for God's sake. But I did see a lot of content from Swifties dissecting it and trying to interpret lyrics and meanings and even staging and all this sort of stuff. So respect to Taylor Swift. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, doing things by design. And design can help an artist or a designer or a product to market itself as people try to interpret all the different meanings. Whereas hype relies on intense marketing campaigns. And it's quite often that the most hyped brands and the most hyped products, really, they're just driven by the most talented marketers. For example, Cortez, right? I own Cortez garments and things. Like, I buy into the hype as much as anyone else. And also, hype and design, they're not good, intrinsically good or bad. I'll get onto that later on. I really like a lot of the Cortez stuff. A lot of it I think is really, really nicely designed as well. But there's some of it which is just straight hype. And there's no denying that Cortez is one of the most hyped brands actually in the world right now, which is no disrespect to Clint. Clint is a master marketer. I wouldn't be surprised if he lost Cortez tomorrow. He could probably walk into any brand and straight into their marketing department and lead campaigns because he's that good, genuinely. And I think even though some of the designs are good, I think the marketing way outweighs the design ability at Cortez. And I say similar is true for Supreme as well. Supreme is massively about hype. And although sometimes their designs can be lovely, the hype outweighs the design. But both Cortez and Supreme, the hype is really well done. And the design, when it's done, is also really well done. And I talk about this idea of a quadrant where you've got hype and design as the x-axes, and then well done and poorly done as the y-axes. So you can have really well done design, which my example that I always give is like Shakespeare. So the reason that it's design is because there's a lot of intention and there's a lot of really beautiful communication in a lot of Shakespearean sonnets. There's a really great clip of Judi Dench reciting a verse by heart on Graham Norton, and it's beautiful. And I think the whole verse, when you actually dissect it and you investigate into it, it really speaks to human emotions really beautifully in a way that regular prose can't do, in a way that our day-to-day language can't really do. You know how people say when words fail, music speaks, and there are some songs that you listen to and it just stirs up emotions in you because it's speaking to the emotions that you feel but aren't necessarily able to express. I think Shakespeare could do that with words, which is really rare. And being able to communicate that or to resonate with people in that kind of way is a talent. And it was clearly very intentional. So it's design, and it's really well done because it's successful in doing so. So it's well done design. And then you've got poorly executed design, which has got all the right intentions, but it misses the mark. These are the things that can be seen as potentially quite pretentious. I'm at risk of this podcast being poorly executed design, but I'm trying. It's when you can tell that someone's got good intentions and they're trying to communicate something, or they're trying to help the user or trying to serve the user, whoever that is, or the consumer, but they're just missing the mark on the execution. And I think that the best way to alleviate that is to look at well-executed design and just get reps in to try and get up there. The example that I've given in a recent video is the viral video from Mind Valley, where I don't know her name, but she said, "Don't love your job, job your love." And the intrinsic message in that, I think, is actually a really good one. It's treat your passions and the things that you love as you would a job, as seriously as you would a job. And so I think the message is great, but the delivery, even though off the bat it might sound relatively poetic, and it definitely has resonated with people, and it's definitely really memorable, I think it kind of missed, and it left itself open to memes, basically. So, you know, but it's not to knock it. I think the intention is there, and it's just taking reps. It's kind of analogous to someone going to the gym for the first time. If you're really out of shape, you can't knock anyone for going to the gym for the first time. You can't knock anyone for going to the gym full stop. No one looks like a fool in the gym, and literally it just takes reps to get to where someone with a great body, inverted commas, is at. It just takes reps. So I don't think you can knock anyone for the poorly executed design. The only way that you're going to get to well executed design is by putting in the reps. And then you've got well executed hype, which I've already alluded to when you're talking about the likes of Supreme and Cortez, for example. The main difference, as I said, between hype and design is that hype is centered around the product. It's all about the product, and the perceived value of the product needs to be constantly reinvested into, in a similar way to how we talk about money. If we didn't all buy into this collective idea of money, it would cease to exist. But because a £50 note has no intrinsic value apart from the value that we give to it, in the same way that a Supreme box logo t-shirt was never worth $300 or whatever, apart from the fact that we all give it the value of $300. But if there's a specific t-shirt or hoodie or whatever product that has intrinsic value to you as the user, but not necessarily to everyone else, then that's when you know that it's more about design, because that thing has resonated with you specifically. And if you can get that en masse, then great. But it's really a one-to-one relationship between the product and the user, which is what makes something design. Whereas if it's about the product, that's hype. And then you've got poorly executed hype, which I would put fast fashion into that bucket, because fast fashion exists to be churned through, essentially. It exists to allow people to go on a shopping spree on a regular basis, buy more clothes than we need to, just to do the act of buying clothes or to do the act of going shopping. And there's built-in obsolescence, which is to say that the garments aren't made to last forever. The garments are made to break, or the garments are just made really poorly, because poorly made garments are cheap to make. And they're made really poorly so that there's a high churn rate, which means that you keep coming back for more. So there's the hype around the whole shopping experience, around the retail therapy experience. There's hype around that without delivering any intrinsic value to the person, apart from fulfilling time, fulfilling the need to go shopping, I suppose. So I put fast fashion into that bucket. This whole podcast, even though this episode has been very heavily about fashion, is not solely about fashion, and it's not even solely about design as a discipline. I think doing things by design can permeate into all areas of life: philosophy, health, fitness, the way that we live life, the way that we see life, the way that we interact with friends, our relationships, everything else. And it's literally just doing things with intention. When we look at life, the user in the by design philosophy is ourselves. And often I think it's quite easy to forget that, and to forget, okay, well, what is best for me? Genuinely, what's best for me moving forward? And how can I intentionally get myself to where it is that I want to be in a way that's sustainable, in a way that makes me happy? So it's just about living life by design. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to some really cool people who absolutely do that. And these people are inspirational with their just zest for life, and their just such cool people. You take one look at their Instagram or their Instagram story and you're just filled with motivation and desire to go out and achieve. And that's the kind of feeling that I want to hopefully help any listeners of this podcast get, just to really go out there and enjoy it and want to go out and live by design. So this has been a shorter episode. We're at 14 minutes-ish. But I really appreciate you for listening to this one. If you found it useful, if you found it helpful, entertaining, funny, please share it with someone who you think would also find it funny, useful, or otherwise entertaining. Please make sure that you are following the podcast, that you like and that you subscribe on whatever it is that you're using to listen to this or to watch this, indeed. And I really appreciate you for listening and for joining me on my third podcast episode already. This is crazy. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.